The Ulysses space probe, taking a unique view of the Sun's poles. Testing aircraft underwater, a new way of solving aerodynamic problems. And the Delabole Energy Centre, new technology with a clean green philosophy. This model of a 747 is being tested underwater. It's not crash survival testing, the model is actually flying through the water. It's part of an ongoing study into the turbulence that surrounds an aircraft in flight. For a long time, NASA researchers have been trying to solve the problem of wake vortices, those funnel-like patterns of air that swirl off a plane's wings. The larger the plane, the larger the vortex and resulting problem. Vortices can't be seen unless smoke or dipods are attached to the wings. Here, the second test plane intentionally follows much closer than normal. This allows engineers to visually observe and study both the vortex and its results.
Okay, we're taking 50 kilo intersection. It's okay, bro. Pilgrim 203, right on the outer code. I got him.
Right now, air traffic controllers avoid the problem altogether by carefully spacing the takeoffs and landings. However, if the vortices can be reduced or eliminated, it will cut down air traffic delays at many of the world's busiest airports. This is Hydronomics in Laurel, Maryland. It was here that NASA recently completed a series of tests to look at the vortex problem from a different angle. The tank used is 140 metres long and 4 metres deep. Testing an aircraft in water may seem like a strange idea, but water and air are both fluid mediums, and the advantage of using water is that the flow and drag figures of a model in water are similar to the numbers that you get from a full-scale plane in flight. The vortex-generating model is mounted on the carriage, and the motor-driven carriage moves the model through the water. The following model, the small business jet, is mounted on a separate carriage downstream of the generating aircraft. This particular test lasts approximately 25 seconds and delivers roughly 15 seconds of data. As the test progresses, dye is let out of the wingtips of the generator aircraft and swirls in the vortex. This allows researchers to see the vortex and to record it on film for later analysis. Results of the wake vortex research are encouraging. While NASA is having success in changing the airflow over the wings using flaps and deflectors to break up the vortices, the FAA is working to develop instruments to detect and thus avoid them. Eventually, results from this research will be used in the design of new aircraft, able to fly more safely, more comfortably, and more efficiently. The Imperial Cancer Research Fund in London. Here, Dr. Richard Poulsam and Professor Nick Wright studied men who had received kidney transplants from female donors. They discovered male cells in the transplanted organs, proof that new kidney cells were being made in the bone marrow. Professor Wright thinks that within 18 months there will be a practical stem cell treatment for patients with damaged kidneys. Rebuilding a patient's kidney with their own genetic material means that the new tissue will be compatible with the original kidney cells. Not only will this save lives, but it will mean more people will be freed from restrictive dialysis treatment. These adult stem cells won't replace the need for kidney transplantation. But other researchers are looking at ways to grow whole new kidneys. Stem cell treatment could reverse the upward trend in those suffering kidney damage, reducing the number of people who rely on dialysis and transplant operations. The Sun, our nearest star. Today, this source of all our energy is under intense scientific study from Earth and by satellites. Since 1990, the Ulysses spacecraft has been on the most specialised mission of solar observation ever. It is the Sun that makes our planet habitable, and it is the warmth that it provides that drives our weather systems. For physicists, the Sun is the only star near enough to study in any detail. New techniques are revealing just how rich that detail is. For centuries, scientists who studied the Sun saw an incomplete picture, for the Earth's atmosphere blocks much of the radiation. It was not until satellites were able to observe from above the atmosphere that we started to get a clearer picture of the Sun. In 1973, Skylab, with an array of solar observational instruments, made it possible to see the Sun across its full spectrum. Skylab's discoveries astounded scientists and stimulated interest in solar research. Research that extended to the edges of the heliosphere, the region over which the Sun has an influence. From the Earth, physicists were unable to observe a most important region of the Sun, its poles. Scientists believe that these polar regions could hold unique clues to the nature of our nearest star. Only by flying above the poles would they be able to measure the processes that go on there. This was the purpose of Ulysses, a joint venture between NASA and the European Space Agency. Launched in October 1990, Ulysses carries a package of 9 scientific instruments.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
It was taken aloft aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery and then propelled out of Earth orbit by a Centaur booster. To lift Ulysses out of the ecliptic plane, the plane in which the Earth orbits the Sun, the spacecraft was sent on a unique course towards Jupiter. Following a flypast of Jupiter in February 1992, the spacecraft is now travelling in an elliptical, sun-centred orbit inclined at 80.2 degrees to the solar equator. Ulysses has already done one pass over the Sun's poles. Orbiting the Sun every 6.2 years, the probe is presently in its second pass. Instruments on board Ulysses study the Sun's corona, the halo only visible from Earth during an eclipse. Other experiments measure fluctuations in the Sun's tangled magnetic field. Yet other instruments detect and record data about cosmic rays coming from other parts of our galaxy. Scientists have many reasons for sending a probe over the Sun's polar regions. Initial observations had convinced them that the nature of the corona and the solar wind that flows from it are very different at the Sun's higher latitudes. Data from Ulysses has already confirmed this. Another reason is that physicists believe that the immensely complex solar phenomena may be less tangled and more easily understood in polar regions. We already know that the Sun is more complicated than it appears from Earth. It is a seething thermonuclear cauldron with vast quantities of energy bursting from the interior, creating unimaginable turmoil at the surface. As this energy pours outward across space, it carries with it ever-shifting electric and magnetic fields throughout the solar system. What adds to the complication is that the Sun rotates, and material at the equator rotates faster than material near the poles. As a result, the Sun's electrical and magnetic fields near the equator become tangled and complex. And additional complexities originate in the corona. Here, the solar wind springs into being and blows outward in all directions. Skylab made an important discovery about the corona and the solar wind. There are huge tears in the corona, called coronal holes. These dark patches are areas where vast clouds of solar wind particles have escaped. The particles move at many different speeds, so that the higher energy particles bunch up behind the slower ones. The result is a traffic jam that snarls the magnetic field lines around the Sun's equator into a convoluted tangle that constantly twists and knots and becomes ever harder to understand. Ulysses physicists are also studying particles that originate during solar flares. Solar flares are the most catastrophic and energetic events on the Sun. The particles they yield have extremely high energy. These high-energy particles explode outwards, leaping from one magnetic field line to another to complicate matters around the Sun's equator even more. But at the poles, there is less turmoil and therefore greater simplicity. That simplicity is bringing valuable insight into the processes within the corona. While Ulysses is near the poles, it is also measuring cosmic rays, bits of matter from distant stars. Cosmic rays are born in cataclysm and bear witness to events like the deaths of stars. Some of these cosmic rays are greatly changed by the magnetic field near the Sun's equator, so changed that scientists can learn almost nothing of their nature before they enter the solar system. However, above the solar poles, incoming cosmic rays should change very little. Ulysses is in its 11th year of solar exploration. Its second pass over the Sun's poles is happening at a period of peak solar activity, Solar Maximus, a solar environment that should return results very different to that encountered on its first pass. Already, Ulysses has added immense new knowledge about our nearest star, the Sun. Researchers in the United States are set to start human trials of a new Alzheimer's vaccine.
Okay.
The new vaccine, developed by researchers at New York University Medical School, has been successful in blocking the progress of Alzheimer's in genetically engineered mice. Alzheimer's disease is characterised by the development of plaques which destroy brain cells. The test mice had a human gene for Alzheimer's disease added. 7 months after receiving the vaccine, plaque in the mice had been reduced by 89%. Alzheimer's is a progressive, degenerative brain disease which causes confusion, personality and behaviour changes and impaired judgment. Researchers said they expected to test the vaccine in initial human clinical trials within a year. They also expressed optimism that this vaccine would prove to be safer than another one already being tested in human clinical trials. A leading researcher in the area, Dr. Blas Frangioni, says his hope is that the vaccine can eventually be used on humans before Alzheimer's sets in. According to the Alzheimer's Association, 4 million Americans have Alzheimer's disease, including 1 in 10 people over the age of 65 and nearly half of all those over 85. The Alzheimer's Association said that without a cure or prevention, the number of sufferers will jump to 14 million by 2050. Results of the study involving the vaccine trials on the genetically altered mice have been published in the American Journal of Pathology. Dr. Thomas Wisniewski, one of its authors, is optimistic that the initial success found in the trials on mice will work on humans as well. Standing up to 32 metres high and weighing 24 tonnes, these huge windmills generate electricity and the whole process is extremely clean. Since it opened in 1991, Delabole Wind Farm has attracted thousands of tourists. Interest in the wind farm has grown so much over the past few years that the owners, together with local scientists, have opened a centre dedicated to renewable energy. On display are some of the latest and most energy-efficient technologies. The centre reflects the Gaia philosophy of the environment, a concept devised by independent scientist James Lovelock. The Gaia Energy Centre shows people how energy can be made from Earth's own heat, water, wind and other natural resources. James Lovelock says it's more than an exhibition. He wants it to affect people's lives. The wind farm was originally established as an alternative to the nuclear power plant the British government had wanted to build in Cornwall. The Delabole Wind Farm and now the Gaia Energy Centre are starting to generate a reputation for Cornwall as one of the world's most enlightened renewable energy regions. It may not be quite on the scale of the real World Cup, but the passions at this robot soccer tournament are just as deep. The contest is deadly serious and requires as much skill as the human game. Like human players, the robots must be fast, smart and have a good sense of the field. The robots' movements are directed remotely by computer. The international contest is a chance for researchers and students to apply artificial intelligence to robotic systems. It's a lot of fun and the research is useful too. The Robot World Cup has become an annual event since it was first held in 1998 in South Korea. For this most recent event, it was China's turn to play host, with the China Science and Technology Museum in Beijing providing the venue. More than 20 teams from countries including Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, South Korea, Canada and the Czech Republic participated. The event was organised with teams seeded in different groups, just like the real World Cup. Although rest between matches was not an issue, time out for routine maintenance and running repairs to the robotic contestants was. The trophy bore a striking resemblance to the real World Cup trophy too. Organisers were pleased that there was absolutely no crowd violence. Last year's World Cup winner was a South Korean team, and this year, once again, South Korea took home the trophy. The winning Mascaro team are from Post Tech University. Next year, the Robot World Cup will take place on the sidelines of the real World Cup in South Korea, with soccer players like this having to share the limelight with their human counterparts. But will robot soccer players ever share the same field with human players? We'll have to wait at least 50 years before we find out.